The Whitmore house stood on a hill overlooking the city, wrapped in glass, steel, and silent power. From the outside, it looked like success had chosen this place as its permanent address. Expensive cars rested in the driveway like obedient guards. Inside, every surface gleamed, every object spoke of wealth, and every corner whispered control. Welcome to my channel. If you're watching this on Facebook, don't forget to follow the page. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed the story, let me know in the comments below. You can also share your thoughts from the heart in the comments, so I can create more stories based on what you love. But justice had never crossed its gates. Evelyn Whitmore learned that truth long before she learned how to smile for guests. She was the kind of woman people admired from a distance, calm posture, sharp eyes, and a voice that never shook even when her heart did. At 32, she had everything society praised: education, elegance, and access to privilege. Yet, in the quiet moments when the house slept, Evelyn knew something was missing, something money could never buy: fairness. Her father, Richard Whitmore, had built an empire from ruthless decisions disguised as intelligence. Courts bowed, contracts bent, and people disappeared quietly from his path. To the world, he was a self-made legend. At home, he was a man who believed authority replaced morality. Her mother, Margaret, had once tried to argue. That phase ended years ago. Silence had become her survival. And then there was Daniel. Daniel Whitmore was the anomaly in a house built on compromise. He was younger than Evelyn by 4 years, but carried a weight far heavier than his age. While others saw inheritance, Daniel saw responsibility. While Richard saw profit, Daniel saw consequences. Money never impressed him. Respect did. That difference would change everything. The dinner table was long, polished, and cold. Conversations there were rarely about feelings, only numbers, leverage, and appearances. On that particular evening, the tension arrived before the food. Richard cleared his throat. That alone was enough to silence everyone. "We're finalizing the East Harbor deal," he said, cutting his steak with mechanical precision. "The council vote is tomorrow." Evelyn paused mid-bite. She knew that deal. Everyone did. Homes would be taken. Families relocated. Compensation would look generous on paper but mean ruin in reality. Daniel set his fork down. "That land isn't legally ours to pressure," he said calmly. Richard didn't look up. "Everything is legal once it's signed." "That's not legality," Daniel replied. "That's force." The word hung in the air like smoke. Margaret stared at her plate. Evelyn felt her chest tighten. Richard finally raised his eyes. "You're confusing morality with business." "No," Daniel said. "I'm separating them." Silence followed. Dangerous silence. "You'll attend the meeting tomorrow," Richard continued, voice flat. "Your presence will secure trust. Your last name is worth more than arguments." Daniel pushed his chair back slightly. "I won't be there." Evelyn's breath caught. Richard's jaw tightened. "Excuse me. I won't use our name to crush people who can't fight back," Daniel said. "I won't be part of this." The room seemed to shrink. "You think you're better than this family?" Richard asked. "No," Daniel answered. "I think we should be better." That was the moment, the exact moment, when lines were drawn. Richard stood. "Then you'll step aside. You don't want the money? Fine. But don't expect protection when you walk away." Daniel met his gaze. "I don't want protection bought with shame." Evelyn watched her brother walk out of the room, not in anger, not in drama, but with dignity. That decision, quiet and firm, would echo for years. Later that night, Evelyn knocked on Daniel's door. "Come in," he said. His room was simple. No trophies. No gold accents. Just books, notes, and a quiet mind. "You know what you just did," Evelyn said. "Yes. You stepped away from everything." Daniel smiled faintly. "I stepped toward myself." She sat beside him. "Father won't forgive this." "I didn't ask him to." Evelyn studied her brother. "Do you ever wonder if standing alone is worth it?" Daniel looked at her, eyes steady. "If I stayed, I'd lose myself. And that's a price I won't pay." Something shifted inside Evelyn. For the first time, she questioned not her brother, but the house they lived in. The next morning, the deal passed. Homes were marked. Papers signed. Smiles exchanged. Daniel's name was absent. Richard never mentioned him again. But absence has a voice. And guilt has memory. Weeks turned into months. Evelyn began noticing things she had ignored before. Employees who avoided eye contact. Old friends who no longer visited. Her mother's silent tears behind closed doors. And Daniel was different. He moved out. Took a modest job. Refused financial help. The world outside the Whitmore walls was harsher but cleaner. One evening, Evelyn visited him. His apartment was small. Warm. Honest. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Daniel shook his head. "Regret comes from knowing better and doing worse. I did what I could." She nodded slowly. That night, Evelyn realized something terrifying and freeing. Justice had never lived in her father's house. But it might live elsewhere. What Daniel didn't know, what no one knew, was that his decision had already begun to crack something deep inside Richard Whitmore. Because power survives on obedience. And the first refusal is always the loudest. The house on the hill still stood tall, but its foundation had started to tremble. And soon, conscience would demand payment. That payment did not arrive loudly. It came slowly, quietly, the way guilt always does, slipping into places where power once felt unshakable. Richard Whitmore did not change overnight. Men like him never do. But something subtle began to disturb his certainty. Deals still closed. Influence still worked. Yet obedience no longer felt guaranteed. The absence of Daniel, his refusal, had planted a thought Richard could not uproot. What if power could be denied? That question haunted him. Evelyn felt the shift before anyone else. She noticed it in the way her father paused before speaking, in the way meetings lasted longer, in the irritation behind his calm. For years, she had moved through life like a guest in her own home, observing, adapting, surviving. Now, Daniel's choice had forced her to look inward. And she did not like what she saw. She had benefited from injustice. That realization burned. The first Real crack appeared during a charity gala, one of Richard's public performances of generosity. Cameras flashed. Donors smiled. Evelyn stood beside her father, flawless in appearance, hollow inside. A woman approached her. "Ms. Whitmore," she said softly. "You don't know me." Evelyn smiled politely. "How can I help you?" The woman's hands trembled. "My family lived in East Harbor. My father died 3 months after we were forced out. Stress," the doctor said. Evelyn's breath tightened. "I just wanted you to know," the woman continued, "your brother came to see us. He apologized. He helped us find housing. He didn't have to." Evelyn felt something fracture. "I'm not here to accuse," the woman said. "I just wanted to say, your brother has honor." She walked away. Evelyn stood frozen, applause echoing around her like mockery. That night, she could not sleep. The next morning, Evelyn made a decision she had delayed her entire life. She went to see Daniel. Daniel looked surprised when he opened the door. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I don't think I ever have been." They sat in silence for a while. "I met someone from East Harbor," Evelyn finally said. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "I'm sorry." "No," she replied. "I am." That was the first time she said it out loud. "I stood by," she continued. "I watched. I did nothing." Daniel looked at her carefully. "You were surviving." "So were they," she said. "And they didn't have a choice." Silence again, heavy, necessary. "I don't want to live like that anymore," Evelyn said. "I don't want comfort without conscience." Daniel didn't smile. He simply nodded. "Then don't." Those 2 words changed her life. Evelyn began quietly. She reviewed contracts, studied records, looked into the legal gray zones her father exploited. The more she uncovered, the heavier the truth became. This wasn't just business. This was harm. And she had access. Richard noticed her distance. "You've been distracted," he said one evening. "I've been thinking," Evelyn replied. "About what?" "About consequences." He scoffed. "That's a luxury." "So is ignorance," she said. His eyes sharpened. "Be careful." Evelyn met his gaze. "I am." But she wasn't careful enough. The whistleblower didn't come from outside. She came from within. Documents leaked. Investigations began. Questions surfaced in places Richard once controlled. He suspected Daniel. He was wrong. When the authorities arrived, the house felt smaller than ever. Margaret cried. Richard raged. Evelyn stood still. For the first time, she did not feel afraid. Daniel watched the news in silence. He knew what this would cost her. When she called him, her voice was steady. I told the truth, she said. He exhaled. I know. I might lose everything. Daniel replied softly, you already gained something. What? Yourself. The trial didn't end quickly. Reputation bled before verdicts did. Friends disappeared. Power evaporated. And Richard Whitmore, once untouchable, was finally forced to listen. To victims. To facts. To silence. Evelyn testified. Her voice never shook. She spoke not as an heiress, but as a witness. As a woman who chose accountability over inheritance. When it was over, she walked out alone. No applause. No comfort. Just clarity. Daniel waited outside. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The house on the hill would be sold. The empire dismantled. But something else was being built slowly, honestly. Justice did not arrive dressed in victory. It arrived as responsibility. And it stayed. Justice stayed, but it did not bring peace immediately. It brought consequences. Evelyn Whitmore learned quickly that truth does not free you from pain. It only frees you from lies. And sometimes, the lies were the only thing holding a life together. The weeks after the trial felt unreal. The Whitmore name, once spoken with admiration or fear, was now followed by silence. Invitations stopped arriving. Phones rang less. The city that had once opened its doors now pretended it had never known her. Evelyn moved out of the house on the hill quietly. No farewell. No memories packed with care. Just a door closing behind her. She rented a small apartment near the river, nothing elegant, nothing symbolic. Just enough space to breathe. For the first time in her adult life, Evelyn had no title attached to her name. No power. No shield. Only responsibility. And the strange calm that came with it. Daniel visited her often. He never said, I told you so. He never tried to guide her. He simply listened. One evening, as rain pressed against the windows, Evelyn finally asked the question that had been circling her thoughts for months. Does it ever stop hurting? She asked. Daniel considered it. No, but it stops owning you. She nodded. That answer felt honest. Richard Whitmore awaited sentencing. In private moments, Evelyn wondered if she should visit him. She didn't want forgiveness. She didn't want closure. She wanted understanding. But some doors close forever. Margaret moved into a smaller home outside the city. She called Evelyn once. I should have protected you, her mother said, voice shaking. Evelyn closed her eyes. You survived the only way you knew how. That was the closest they came to healing. Evelyn needed work. Not influence. Not charity. Work. She applied anonymously. She was rejected often. Her last name still carried weight, but now it was the wrong kind. Finally, a nonprofit accepted her. They worked with displaced families. East Harbor was one of their cases. Evelyn didn't ask for special assignments. But fate rarely listens to requests. Her first field visit changed her. She stood in a temporary housing complex where children played between buildings that all looked the same. Parents spoke softly, tired but alert. These were the people she had never seen from the windows of the Whitmore house. She listened. She learned. And she carried the weight of it home every night. One afternoon, a woman recognized her. You're his daughter, she said. Evelyn didn't deny it. Yes. The woman studied her face. Why are you here? Evelyn answered simply. Because I should have been here sooner. The woman nodded. That was enough. Daniel watched his sister transform. She was quieter now. Stronger. Less polished. More real. You're different, he said one evening. So are you, Evelyn replied. He smiled. I always was. She smiled back for the first time without guilt. The media didn't forget her. Articles resurfaced. Commentators speculated. She betrayed her own blood. She's performing guilt. She wants redemption. Evelyn stopped reading. Justice didn't need applause. Then came the offer. A legal advocacy group reached out. They wanted her to speak. Publicly. Why? She asked. Because people listen when someone gives up power, they replied. Evelyn hesitated. Standing up once had cost her everything. Standing up again would cost her peace. She accepted anyway. Her first speech was not dramatic. No anger. No tears. Just truth. I was raised in a house where wealth replaced morality, she said. I didn't question it until someone I loved did. She spoke about Daniel. About silence. About choice. The room listened. Not because of who she was, but because of what she had lost. Afterward, a young woman approached her. I grew up like you, she said. I thought comfort meant safety. Evelyn replied gently, it doesn't. Integrity does. The words surprised even her. Richard was sentenced quietly. No cameras. No speeches. Just a gavel and a door closing. Evelyn did not attend. She did not need to. Months passed. Evelyn and Daniel built a new rhythm. Not wealth. Not power. Purpose. They worked separately but aligned. Two people who chose conscience over inheritance. One night, standing by the river, Evelyn spoke softly. I don't know who I would be if you hadn't walked away first. Daniel looked at her. You would have found your way. You always were capable. She shook her head. No. I needed to see it was possible. That was the truth. Justice had stayed. But now it demanded something else. Continuation. Responsibility without recognition. Doing the right thing again. And again. And again. The hardest part wasn't losing everything. It was choosing integrity every day after. Integrity is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask to be seen. It simply waits for the moment when doing the wrong thing would be easier and then demands resistance. Evelyn Whitmore learned this not in a courtroom, not under headlines, but in the ordinary, exhausting days that followed. The days when no one was watching. The days when there was nothing left to lose and still something left to protect. Character. Life after consequence was not dramatic. It was steady. It was waking up early, commuting with strangers, sitting in rooms where her name meant nothing. It was listening to stories without interrupting, helping without recognition, and learning to be useful without control. That was the real punishment. And the real redemption. Evelyn's work began to change her in ways she had not anticipated. She stopped measuring success in outcomes and started measuring it in effort. Some families found stability. Some didn't. Some days ended in progress. Others ended in frustration. But for the first time in her life, she was not insulated from reality. She was inside it. Daniel watched this evolution quietly. He had always believed his sister was strong, but now he saw something deeper. She was consistent. One evening, after a long day, Evelyn sat on the steps outside her building, staring at the city lights. Do you ever miss it? Daniel asked. The money, she replied. The certainty, he clarified. She thought about it. No, she said finally. Certainty was an illusion. This is real. Daniel nodded. That answer told him everything. The advocacy group grew. Slowly. Evelyn took on more responsibility, not because she demanded it, but because others trusted her. She didn't speak often, but when she did, people listened. Not because she was persuasive, but because she never spoke without truth. She refused donations that came with conditions. She declined partnerships that compromised ethics. It cost them growth. It preserved their soul. Years passed. The Whitmore name faded into history, mentioned occasionally in case studies, business schools, and political scandals. A cautionary tale. Evelyn never corrected the record. She didn't need to. She lived the correction. One afternoon, she received a letter. Handwritten. From a woman in East Harbor. It read, because of the work you helped start, my children have a home again. Not the one we lost, but a safe one. I don't know if forgiveness matters, but impact does. Thank you. Evelyn folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Some things were not meant for display. Margaret passed away quietly. No press. No statements. Evelyn and Daniel stood together at the small service. They did not speak about the past. They stood for what remained. As time moved forward, people stopped asking Evelyn about her father. They started asking her about her work. That shift mattered. One evening, at a community forum, a young man raised his hand. "My family has money," he said. "A lot of it. And I'm expected to take over. But I don't agree with how it's made. Walking away feels impossible." The room went silent. Evelyn looked at him. "It will cost you," she said honestly. "Friends. Comfort. Approval." He swallowed. "Is it worth it?" She paused before answering. "Yes," she said. "Because what you keep will finally belong to you." Daniel smiled to himself. That was the sentence that ended the cycle. Evelyn never rebuilt an empire. She built something harder. Trust. It didn't grow fast. It didn't make headlines. But it lasted. Standing once more by the river, years later, Evelyn reflected on the life she might have lived. Power. Privilege. Protection. And she realized something simple and irreversible. That life would have been smaller. Justice does not arrive with reward. It arrives with responsibility. And those who choose it must carry it, every day, without guarantee. Evelyn Whitmore chose it anyway. Not because it was noble, but because it was necessary. And because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it.